Hi there, it's Babs here from Yarn People, and today I'm going to be showing you how to work this gorgeous cable. So we've got one as a left lean and one as a right lean cable for your fisherman's rib. So it's still using the same techniques that you use for fisherman's rib standard knit. So if you need to know how to do that, there is a video. I'll put a link in one or other of the corners for you, and we're going to be using that same technique of knitting in the stitch below to create this gorgeous cable effect. When you have a cable that has the needle taken to the back, it is a right leaning cable, and where you have a cable needle that brings the stitches to the front, it is a left leaning cable. So what I'm going to do is work my way around to the front of the fabric. This is the back, so the front looks like this. So I've actually got a left lean followed by a right lean. So I'll be bringing the stitches to the front, then I'll be taking the stitches to the back for each of the two cables. And what I tend to use is whatever I can get my hands on for a cable needle. So in this case, I actually have a 4.5mm square tip for circular needles. Now this is actually slightly larger than the tips that I'm using, which are circular, just regular circular needles in 4mm. So this gives me a little bit more space in terms of moving around the stitches, and you just need to bring those stitches either to the front or the back, depending upon whether you are left, so you bring it to the front, or right, leaning, in which case you take the stitches to the back. So I will work my way around to where I need to be, which is this point here, and then I'll show you how to work those cables. We're now at the point where we're going to work our first cable, and in this case the cable is left leaning. So what we're going to be doing is picking up whatever you're using for your cable needle, and it's a six stitch cable. So we're going to slip 6 stitches, 1 2 3 4 5 6 stitches onto what I'm using for my cable needle, and then I'm going to hold that to the front of my work and then work the next 6 stitches in fisherman's rib pattern. So exactly the same as I've knit this straight piece, I'm now going to work the next 6 stitches. So we knit in the stitch below, and then purl for our first pair, stitch below, purl for our second pair, stitch below, purl for our third pair, which gives us our 6 stitches. And as you can see, that takes us to the edge of the cable before we start on the cable for the left hand side. And now you can either knit off the end of your cable needle, or you can slip the stitches onto your left hand needle. Now this time around I've put it on the wrong way around, so what I'm going to do is slip those back onto my left hand needle. 1 2 3 4 5 6 stitches, and then I'm going to work those in exactly the same fisherman's rib pattern as before. So this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky potentially, but as long as you're focusing, you should be fine. So we're going to knit not in the first stitch but in the stitch below. So we'll just knit in the stitch below and then purl, and then knit in the stitch below and purl, and then finally for this first cable, knit in the stitch below. And this is where it could become tricky. The first and the last ones are generally tricky because you're running out of space on the last one, and everything's very tight for the first one. So I try to move my work to the point of the needle on my right hand needle to just give me that little bit of extra space, extra leeway to get that stitch beneath for that last fisherman's knit stitch, and then purl. And then we're going to jump immediately, and I'll put the yarn back where it needs to be at the back of the work for the next knit stitch. We're going to jump immediately onto the next cable, but this time I'm going to take it on the end of the blunt end of my my tip. So we've got 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then we're going to hold this to the back of the work. So I'll just hold it with my left hand out of the way. Sometimes, depending upon what you like to do, you can just stab it through your work so it's kept nice and secure, or you can stab it through the other side, or you can just leave it to hang. It depends on what you find comfortable, what you enjoy working with. And then So So have an experiment, have a play around, and then see what works for you. So then we're going to do another 3 pairs of fisherman's rib. So that's knitting the stitch below, purl for the first pair, if I can actually hook that purl round, knit in the stitch below, purl, and then the last of the 3, knit in the stitch below, and then purl. And then what I do, because we now come to the end of this cable, is I generally tend to pull that through so that I've got enough. It's safe, I don't need to think about it. So now all I need to focus on are these stitches that I've moved to the back. So I'm not working on this left needle. I've now changed my cable needle into my left needle. And again, it's going to be a little bit tight on the first and on the last stitch. So we're going to, again, I tend to try and open everything up a little bit before I start and then knit into the stitch below. It just is that little bit easier for me. Then purl for the first of the 3 pairs, and then into the stitch below. Generally becomes much easier on the second stitch. And then it gets a little bit tighter and trickier because we're running out of yarn again. You're running out of slack, so we knit in the stitch below for one last time and purl. And that is your 2 cables completed. So I can put my cable needle to one side, bring back my left needle into play, and then continue on. And then that is really all you need to do in terms of manipulating the stitches for your cable, because all the rows in between the cable twists are just knit flat, they're knit straight, same as you would here. So you just knit all the way across where you're not doing an actual twist stitch. So where you're not moving the cable stitches forwards or backwards using a cable needle, everything else is worked plain. So you're just knitting straight across and then straight back and straight across and straight back according to the pattern, however many times, before you then come on to another twist, another turn round. And that is all there is to a fisherman's rib cable. So hopefully that's been useful and you've realised that it's not quite as complex as it looks, because it does look rather daunting, although it's an absolutely gorgeous texture, really squishy, chunky texture. Hopefully you will find that useful, and if you do, could you give it a thumbs up, share it around maybe, and subscribe to the channel if you are interested in more knitting or crochet tutorials. But until next time, I will say bye for now.